What happens when a Hollywood icon known for his charm, wit, and effortless confidence suddenly finds himself sitting under the harsh studio lights, facing questions that cut deeper than expected? The kind of questions that make even the smoothest celebrity pause, just for a second. Before we dive into this intense moment, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, hit the like button, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Because stories like this, raw, dramatic, and unforgettable, are exactly what Stage View is all about. The studio lights inside the set of The View glow brighter than usual that morning. The audience buzzes with anticipation, whispering and adjusting in their seats as producers move quietly across the floor. Everyone knows today's guest is a big one. When the doors open and George Clooney walks onto the stage, the room erupts. Applause. Cheers. A few whistles. Clooney smiles the way he always does, relaxed, confident, the grin of a man who has spent decades mastering public appearances. He waves, shakes hands with the hosts, and takes his seat at the iconic table. Around him sit the familiar faces of the show: Sonny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin. At first, everything feels light. Whoopi leans back in her chair, smiling warmly. "So, George," she says with that unmistakable calm voice, "you've done it all: movies, directing, activism. Is there anything left for you to conquer?" The audience chuckles. Clooney shrugs with playful modesty. "I'm still trying to figure out how to make a decent cup of coffee at home without embarrassing myself." Laughter ripples across the room. Joy Behar jumps in quickly. "Come on, George. You literally own a tequila empire, and you're telling us coffee is the challenge." "Tequila is easier," Clooney replies with a grin. "You just pour it." The banter flows easily, the kind of friendly conversation viewers expect. They talk about his latest film project, about life with his wife, Amal Clooney, about fatherhood and raising twins. The audience melts when he tells a small story about his kids hiding his phone, so he'll stop answering work emails. For a moment, it feels like every other celebrity interview. But across the table, Sonny Hostin sits quietly, watching, listening. Her fingers rest lightly on her notes. Sonny has built her reputation on something different from Hollywood charm. She's a former federal prosecutor. She doesn't just chat, she interrogates. And today she has questions. As the laughter begins to settle, Sonny leans forward slightly. Her tone is calm, respectful, but direct. "George," she says, her voice cutting gently through the chatter, "you've been very vocal about global justice and humanitarian causes for many years." Clooney nods. "Yes." The audience expects another comfortable story. But Sonny continues. "You've spoken about accountability in governments and powerful institutions." She pauses. "Do you think Hollywood holds itself to that same level of accountability?" The room shifts. It's subtle, but noticeable. Clooney blinks once, surprised by the sudden turn. "Well, I think people try," he says carefully. Sonny tilts her head. "Try," she repeats. A few audience members exchange glances. Joy Behar senses the tension and chuckles nervously. "Oh boy," she says. Sonny's putting on the prosecutor robe. The audience laughs, easing the pressure for a second. But Sonny isn't finished. She flips one page of her notes. "Because critics say Hollywood speaks loudly about justice on the world stage," she continues, "but sometimes struggles to confront issues inside its own industry." Clooney's smile fades just slightly. The actor shifts in his chair. Not uncomfortable yet, but alert. "What kind of issues?" he asks. Sonny meets his eyes. "Power. Influence. Silence." The audience grows quiet. Even the camera operators seem to slow their movements. Sonny continues. "You've been one of the most respected voices in Hollywood," she says. "So people naturally wonder, when controversies arise in the industry, whether about fairness, representation, or misconduct, should figures like you speak out more often?" The question hangs in the air like a suspended note in music. Clooney leans back slightly, crossing one leg. For a moment, he studies Sonny. He's done thousands of interviews. But he recognizes when a conversation shifts from promotion to confrontation. "Well," he says slowly, "I think it's important for everyone to speak up when something is wrong." Sonny nods. "But is speaking up enough?" she asks. Now the room really goes silent. A murmur passes through the audience. Clooney lets out a small breath. He smiles again, but this one feels more measured. "That's a big question," he says. Sonny doesn't smile back. Sometimes big questions need big answers. Joy Behar glances between them like she's watching a tennis match. Sarah Haynes leans forward, intrigued. Even Whoopi Goldberg raises her eyebrows slightly. The conversation is no longer casual. Clooney straightens in his seat. Well, look, he begins. No industry is perfect. Hollywood has had its share of problems, like many institutions. Sonny nods. But do you believe it has done enough to change? Clooney pauses. The camera zooms slightly closer. I think it's trying, he says again. Sonny's voice stays calm. Trying or avoiding? A collective gasp ripples through the audience. Even Clooney looks momentarily caught off guard. For a split second, the famous Hollywood composure cracks. He lets out a short laugh. That sounds like a cross-examination. Sonny smiles politely. Old habits. The audience laughs nervously. But the tension remains. Clooney leans forward now, resting his hands on the table. You know, he says, change doesn't happen overnight. It takes pressure, conversation, and people willing to confront uncomfortable truths. Sonny nods. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. The audience murmurs again. But Sonny isn't done. She glances down at another note. Then back up. And speaking of uncomfortable truths, the way she says it makes the air feel heavier. Clooney senses it too. His eyes narrow slightly. What do you mean? He asks. Sonny's voice softens, but her words become sharper. You've built a reputation as someone who challenges power structures, she says. But some critics say Hollywood elites sometimes criticize governments more easily than they criticize their own circles. Joy Behar quietly whispers, here we go. Sonny continues. So I want to ask you directly, George. The audience leans forward. Do you think celebrities sometimes use activism as a shield? Silence. Real silence. Clooney's smile disappears completely now. The room waits. For the first time in the interview, the legendary actor looks genuinely thoughtful. The cameras zoom in. Whoopi folds her hands quietly. Sonny doesn't break eye contact. And somewhere in the audience, someone whispers softly, wow, because suddenly, this isn't just another morning talk show conversation. It's a moment, and everyone in the room knows it. Clooney takes a slow breath. Then he begins to answer. But no one yet realizes that the next few minutes are about to turn this friendly interview into one of the most intense conversations The View has seen in years. And Sonny Hostin is only just getting started. For a moment, the studio sits in a silence so thick it almost feels like the cameras themselves are holding their breath. Across the table, George Clooney studies Sonny Hostin carefully. His expression is calm, but different now. The relaxed Hollywood charm has shifted into something sharper. Focused. The audience can feel it. This is no longer just a celebrity interview. Sonny's question still hangs in the air. Do celebrities sometimes use activism as a shield? Clooney leans forward slightly, folding his hands on the glossy table of The View. He lets out a quiet breath. Well, he says slowly, choosing each word, I think that's a fair question. A murmur ripples through the audience. Sonny doesn't interrupt. Clooney continues. But I also think it's a dangerous assumption. Sonny raises an eyebrow. How so? Clooney tilts his head slightly, looking at her directly. Because when someone uses their platform to talk about injustice, the easiest way to dismiss that voice is to question their motives. A few audience members clap lightly. Sonny nods once, acknowledging the point. But questioning motives, she says calmly, is part of accountability. Clooney smiles faintly. That sounds like the prosecutor talking again. A few chuckles break out. But Sonny doesn't back down. Maybe, she says. But the public also asks those questions. She flips another page of notes. And sometimes the public wonders where certain voices are when controversies happen closer to home. Now Clooney's expression tightens slightly. What controversies are you referring to? He asks. Sonny pauses, just long enough for the tension to grow. Well, she says, Hollywood has gone through major reckonings over the past decade, issues involving power, abuse, and silence. The audience grows quiet again. Everyone knows what she's referencing without needing names. Clooney nods slowly. Yes, he says. Sonny leans forward. And while many people spoke out, others were criticized for speaking too late. The cameras zoom in on Clooney. For a moment, his eyes flick downward. Then back up. Are you asking me specifically? He says. Sonny answers immediately. Yes. The room reacts with a low collective murmur. At the far end of the table, Joy Behar shifts in her chair, glancing toward Whoopi Goldberg. Even Whoopi looks intrigued now. Sonny's voice stays composed. You've been in Hollywood for decades, she continues. You've worked with powerful producers, studios, executives. Clooney listens carefully. So the question people sometimes ask, Sonny says, is whether influential figures inside the industry could have spoken out sooner. The words land heavily. Clooney exhales slowly. I understand the question, he says. But hindsight is powerful. Sonny tilts her head slightly. Some would say hindsight isn't the issue. Clooney looks at her again. What is then? Sonny's tone remains steady. Responsibility. The audience shifts in their seats. A woman in the front row whispers something to the person next to her. Clooney rubs his hands together once, thinking. He says, there's an assumption sometimes that everyone in Hollywood knows everything that's happening behind closed doors. Sonny responds immediately. Are you saying they don't? Clooney shakes his head. I'm saying the industry is bigger and more complicated than people imagine. Sonny watches him closely. But power networks are real, she replies. Yes, Clooney says. And people with influence, Sonny continues, can create change. Clooney nods. That's true. So when change comes late, Sonny says, the question becomes why. The audience murmurs again. Clooney leans back slightly. For the first time, the famous composure shows a hint of strain. Not anger, but seriousness. Look, he says, his voice deeper now. When wrongdoing becomes visible, people have a responsibility to confront it. Sonny nods. And did Hollywood do that fast enough? Clooney pauses. The studio lights reflect off the table. The cameras hover quietly. Finally, he says, no. The audience reacts instantly, gasps, whispers, scattered applause. Sonny's expression doesn't change. Why not? Clooney sighs. Because industries, any industries, protect themselves at first. The honesty surprises people. Even the hosts glance at each other. Clooney continues. It's uncomfortable to confront corruption inside your own house. Sonny nods slowly. But necessary. Yes, Clooney agrees. For a moment, the tension softens. But Sonny flips to another page. And the atmosphere tightens again. There's another aspect of this conversation, she says. Clooney watches her carefully now. What's that? Sonny takes a breath. Celebrity influence. The audience leans in again. You're not just an actor, she says. You're a producer, director, activist. Your words carry weight globally. Clooney nods. But influence also comes with scrutiny, Sonny continues. He smiles slightly. That I'm familiar with. Sonny's voice lowers. Some critics argue that when celebrities enter political or humanitarian conversations, they sometimes simplify complex issues. Clooney's eyebrows lift slightly. Meaning? Sonny answers calmly. Meaning some people question whether celebrities should lead those conversations. A low murmur spreads through the crowd. Joy Behar quietly mutters, "Oh boy." Sonny continues. You've spoken about international justice, refugee crises, global conflicts. Clooney nods. So some ask, she says, whether fame amplifies voices that may not always have the deepest expertise. Now the room is truly tense. Clooney lets out a small laugh, but it isn't lighthearted. Well, he says, I'm certainly not claiming to be the smartest person in any room. A few people laugh, but Sonny presses forward. Then why step into those conversations? Clooney leans forward again. His voice grows firmer. Because silence is worse. The words land hard. Sonny doesn't immediately reply. The audience begins clapping softly. But Sonny raises one finger slightly. Yet some critics say celebrity activism can overshadow experts who have spent their lives studying those issues. Clooney looks directly into her eyes now. That can happen, he admits. So how do you balance that? Sonny asks. Clooney pauses. Then he says something unexpected. You surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. The audience laughs lightly. But seriously, he continues, activism isn't about being the expert. It's about using attention to bring experts into the spotlight. Sonny studies him. And do you think celebrities always do that? Clooney hesitates. Then he smiles faintly. No. The honesty earns another ripple of applause. Sonny nods slowly. For a brief moment, it seems like the conversation might ease. But then Sonny glances at her final note. And something about her expression changes. More serious. More focused. Even Clooney notices. He tilts his head. What? He asks. Sonny looks up. There's one more thing I want to ask. The audience shifts again. Sonny folds her hands together. George, she says quietly, you've spent years challenging powerful systems around the world. Clooney nods slowly. But today, Sunny continues, I want to ask about something closer to home. The room becomes so quiet that even the audience breathing can be heard. Clooney's eyes narrow slightly. What do you mean? Sunny holds his gaze. And then she asks the question no one in the room was expecting. A question so direct that several audience members gasp before she even finishes it. And suddenly, the interview that began as a friendly conversation is about to become something far more explosive. The silence inside the studio of The View becomes almost unbearable. A moment ago, the conversation felt like a tense debate. Now it feels like something bigger. Across the table, Sunny Hostin looks directly at George Clooney, her expression calm but unyielding. The audience senses what's coming. Everyone is leaning forward. Even the hosts, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, are watching closely. At the center of the table, Whoopi Goldberg folds her hands quietly, eyes moving between Sunny and Clooney. Sunny finally speaks. George, she says, her voice steady, you've spent years challenging powerful systems around the world. Clooney nods slowly. But today, Sunny continues, I want to ask about something closer to home. The room grows even quieter. Clooney tilts his head slightly. What do you mean? Sunny takes a breath. Hollywood influence and political influence. The audience murmurs softly. Clooney watches her carefully. Sunny continues. You've been very outspoken in American political conversations. Clooney nods. Yes, but critics sometimes say that wealthy celebrities, people with enormous cultural power, can shape political narratives without facing the same accountability as elected leaders. A few audience members whisper. Sunny leans forward. And because of your activism and fundraising efforts, your name comes up often in that debate. Clooney raises an eyebrow. Fundraising. Sunny nods. You've hosted major political events, supported campaigns, and helped raise millions. Clooney smiles slightly. That's not exactly a secret. A few audience members laugh nervously. Sunny remains composed. No, it isn't. She pauses. But that level of influence raises an interesting question. Clooney's expression tightens just slightly. What question? Sunny meets his gaze. At what point does celebrity advocacy become political power? The audience gasps. Even Joy Behar leans back in her chair with a soft whoa. Clooney lets out a short breath. That's a big leap. Sunny doesn't blink. Is it? The tension spreads across the studio like electricity. Clooney sits forward now, elbows lightly on the table. I support causes I believe in, he says calmly. Sunny nods. And I respect that, she replies. But millions of people hear what you say. Clooney shrugs slightly. That's part of public life. Sunny's tone sharpens just a touch. But public influence can shape elections, policies, even global perceptions. The audience murmurs again. Clooney's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in concentration. Are you suggesting celebrities shouldn't participate in democracy? He asks. Sunny answers immediately. No. She folds her hands. I'm asking whether fame gives certain voices a louder megaphone than others. Clooney smiles faintly. Well, that's been true for centuries. Sunny tilts her head. But should it be? The question lands hard. For the first time since the interview began, Clooney pauses longer than usual before answering. He says slowly, I think democracy includes everyone. Sunny nods. Even movie stars. A few chuckles ripple through the audience. But Sunny continues. Yet some people feel frustrated when Hollywood elites lecture the public about politics. Clooney sighs slightly. I've heard that argument. Sunny presses further. And Clooney leans back in his chair. Well, he says, people are free to disagree with me. Sunny raises an eyebrow. But do you understand why some viewers feel that way? Clooney considers the question. Then he nods. Yes. The audience reacts with surprise. Sunny studies him carefully. You do? Clooney shrugs lightly. Of course. He glances briefly toward the audience. Look, I'm an actor. I tell stories for a living. Sunny watches him closely. But I'm also a citizen, he continues. And citizens have opinions. The audience applauds lightly. Sunny nods. That's true. She pauses. But there's still the question of influence. Clooney smiles slightly. You're very persistent. Sunny smiles back. Occupational hazard. The room laughs again, but the tension never fully disappears. Sunny glances down at her final note. Then she looks up. Let me ask you something more personal. Clooney raises his eyebrows. All right. Sunny speaks slowly. Over the years, you've built a reputation as one of the most respected voices in Hollywood. Clooney nods slightly. But with influence also comes criticism, she continues. And some critics say Hollywood figures sometimes underestimate how their words impact everyday people. Clooney listens carefully. Sonny continues. When celebrities speak about politics, justice, or global issues, some viewers feel they're being talked down to. A low murmur spreads across the audience. Clooney exhales quietly. That's not the intention. Sonny nods. But perception matters. Clooney considers that. Yes, he says. It does. Sonny leans slightly closer. So here's the question many people want to know. The audience goes silent again. Clooney looks directly at her. What is it? Sonny speaks clearly. Do you ever worry that Hollywood, including people like you, has become disconnected from the public it claims to represent? The room erupts in whispers. Joy Behar mutters, that's a tough one. Even Whoopi Goldberg looks intrigued now. Clooney doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he studies Sonny carefully. Then he looks out toward the audience. Rows of faces staring back at him. Some curious, some skeptical, some supportive. Finally, he speaks. You know what? He says quietly. Sometimes yes. The admission shocks the room. A wave of surprised reactions spreads through the crowd. Sonny tilts her head slightly. You believe that? Clooney nods. I think every industry, Hollywood, politics, media, can drift into its own bubble. Sonny listens closely. And when that happens, Clooney continues, people stop listening. The audience begins clapping again. But Sonny raises a hand gently. Then what's the solution? Clooney pauses. Then he says something that shifts the mood again. Conversations like this. The audience applauds louder now. Sonny smiles faintly. But conversations can also be uncomfortable. Clooney nods. They should be. Whoopi Goldberg finally leans forward, breaking her silence. Well, she says with a grin, I think we can all agree this morning just got very interesting. The audience laughs and applauds. But the tension hasn't disappeared. In fact, something about the energy in the room has changed. Because now it feels less like an interview, and more like a debate. Sonny glances toward Whoopi, then back at Clooney. And we're not finished yet. The audience reacts instantly. More gasps. More whispers. Clooney chuckles softly. I had a feeling you were going to say that. Sonny smiles slightly. Because there's one final question. The room falls silent again. And this one is about to send the entire studio into absolute shock. For a moment, the studio feels suspended in time. The bright lights above the set of The View shine down on the table, where the conversation has slowly transformed from friendly banter into something far more intense. Across from each other sit Sonny Hostin and George Clooney, two people from completely different worlds who, in this moment, seem locked in a quiet standoff. The audience senses it, that feeling that something big is about to happen. Sonny folds her hands together, glancing briefly at her notes before looking back up. Clooney watches her closely now. The relaxed smile he wore when he first walked onto the stage is long gone. In its place is a focused expression, the look of someone who understands that every word matters. At the far end of the table, Whoopi Goldberg leans slightly forward, her curiosity unmistakable. Well, Whoopi says calmly, breaking the tension for just a second. You said there was one more question. The audience chuckles nervously. Sonny nods. Yes. She turns back to Clooney. George, we've talked about Hollywood accountability, celebrity activism, political influence. Clooney nods once. But there's another layer to this, Sonny continues. The audience leans forward again. A lot of viewers feel that celebrities sometimes speak passionately about justice and fairness, she says. But when criticism comes their way, the reaction isn't always the same openness. Clooney tilts his head slightly. You mean criticism from the public? Sonny nods. Yes. Clooney shrugs lightly. That comes with the territory. Sonny studies him carefully. But sometimes celebrities push back hard when they feel misunderstood, she says. And that can make the conversation feel one-sided. The room grows quiet again. Sonny leans a little closer. So here's the final question. The audience holds its breath. Do you think Hollywood figures, yourself included, are always willing to listen, or do they sometimes only want to speak? A wave of whispers ripples through the crowd. Even Joy Behar looks impressed by the boldness of the question. Clooney doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly looks around the studio. The audience, the hosts, the cameras. millions of viewers watching from home. Finally, he exhales. You know, he says quietly, that's probably the most important question you've asked today. Sonny's expression softens slightly. Clooney continues. Because the truth is, people in positions of influence can get used to talking. He glances toward the audience again. And not always listening. The crowd murmurs. Sonny nods. So you agree? Clooney pauses. Then he says something that surprises everyone. I think everyone, including me, has to work at listening more. The audience erupts into applause. Even Sonny smiles slightly. But Clooney raises a hand gently. Let me finish. The room quiets again. I don't think celebrities should stop speaking about issues they care about, he continues. But I do think we have to remember that we're part of a bigger conversation. Sonny nods slowly. Not the entire conversation. The audience applauds again. Whoopi Goldberg chuckles softly. Well, she says, that's about as honest an answer as you're going to get on live television. The crowd laughs. For the first time since the interview began, the tension in the room begins to dissolve. Sonny leans back slightly in her chair. I appreciate that answer, she says. Clooney smiles again, this time more relaxed. I appreciate the questions, he replies. Joy Behar jumps in immediately. All right, I think we've officially turned morning television into a political debate. The audience bursts into laughter. Sarah Haynes adds, honestly, I think people at home are probably glued to their screens right now. Clooney chuckles. Hopefully they're still on my side. The audience laughs again. But as the segment wraps up, something unusual happens. The applause from the crowd isn't just polite. It's loud, sustained. People stand up. Some clap for Sonny. Some clap for Clooney. Some simply clap because they know they just witnessed something rare on daytime television. An honest, tense, and thoughtful conversation. Whoopi looks out toward the audience. You know, she says, this is why conversations matter. The cameras begin to pull back slowly. But the story doesn't end there. Because within minutes of the interview airing, the internet explodes. Clips from the segment begin spreading across social media. Comment sections fill with debates. Some viewers praise Sonny Hostin for asking the hard questions. Others applaud George Clooney for answering them head-on. Within hours, entertainment headlines begin appearing online. Clooney faces tough questions on The View. Sonny Hostin challenges Hollywood influence. Explosive debate between Clooney and Hostin goes viral. Talk shows start discussing the moment. Political commentators weigh in. Fans argue back and forth. Was Sonny too aggressive? Was Clooney refreshingly honest? Or was this simply the kind of conversation that rarely happens on television anymore? Back inside the studio, after the cameras stop rolling, the mood is completely different. The tension has faded. Clooney stands up, adjusting his jacket. Sonny stands too. For a brief moment, they look at each other. Then Clooney smiles. That was quite an interview. Sonny smiles back. Good conversations usually are. They shake hands. And just like that, the moment that had millions of viewers holding their breath ends with quiet respect. But for the audience watching at home, the debate continues. Because moments like this don't fade quickly. They spark discussions, arguments, opinions. And now we want to hear from you. What do you think about this intense moment between George Clooney and Sonny Hostin? Was Sonny right to ask such tough questions? Or did George Clooney handle the situation exactly the way a public figure should? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy dramatic celebrity moments like this, raw conversations, shocking interviews, and stories that pull you right into the heart of the moment, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next explosive story. Because on Stage View, the spotlight never tells the whole story. Clapperboard.